So welcome to the 2024 Neighborhood Star pre-proposal workshop. Happy to have you here. So the STAR program has been going on since 1995. We have invested millions of dollars in capital and arts and cultural projects throughout the city of St. Paul. So we're really excited to do this in, I believe, round 30 this year. So thanks for joining us. Here's a little agenda for today's meeting. We will do introductions, hopefully in the chat. I think there are too many of us to go around and say who we all are. So please, our guests, join us and introduce yourselves, say who you are, what business and organization you're from, and anything else you'd like us to know. I am joined by many of my City of St. Paul colleagues, and I will let them introduce themselves as they speak throughout this presentation. And I will just introduce myself quickly. I'm Erin Lewis. I am the program coordinator for the Neighborhood Star program. And this is my second grant round. So I'm really excited to see how this one goes. We will go over today some program information, just a little history, the application process, the compliance. If everyone could mute, that would be great. The compliance that applies to STAR projects, how to use our Zoom grant system, and then additional resources and question and answer. So I want to leave a lot of time at the end for your questions. So if you can save your questions until the end, that is helpful. If there's something really urgent, also please feel free to raise your hand or jump in or put something in the chat. So a little bit about the STAR program. It was started in 1993 when the Minnesota State Legislature allowed the City of St. Paul to levy a half-cent sales tax to make capital improvements in the city of St. Paul and to create the sales tax revitalization program, which is where the word STAR comes from. STAR funds are used for a lot of different things. They're used for just general capital improvements in the downtown and St. Paul area, including the River Center. 10% go to our sister program, which is the Cultural STAR program for arts and culture organizations. And then 50% of those funds are for the Neighborhood Star program, which are grants for capital improvements in St. Paul. A really important part of the STAR program is the STAR board. So the Neighborhood Star board is made up of 21 members, 3 from each ward that are appointed by the mayor. They serve as volunteers and as the advisory board for all of the funding recommendations. So everyone who applies through a STAR program will get to talk with the Neighborhood Star board. They will make their recommendations to the mayor and the city council, who do have final say about funding decisions. And here's a little picture of us at our holiday party. We're a nice group. The application process. How can you apply? So you can apply one time per year for Neighborhood Star funds. That period is open right now. So we open. And applications are due at the latest May 15th by 4 p.m. We will talk about how you should submit earlier than that, but that's our application period for this year. We anticipate granting about $2.5 million this year. So that number can change a little bit depending on tax collections and project closeouts, but that's the number we're kind of thinking about for now. And everything is subject to the Neighborhood Star guidelines, and those can be found at stpaul.gov/nstar. You're going to hear me say that a lot because so much is on our website. But just broadly, the way the program works, all of your applications need to be for capital improvements. So those are physical bricks and mortar improvements. It must be for a project or a property in St. Paul proper. And you must be an eligible applicant. So that's public, nonprofit, or for-profit entities located in or doing business in St. Paul. Also, city departments, churches, and religious organizations can apply, but they usually have to be in partnership with others. And there's some other guidelines that you can read around those entities if you're one of those. Everything is expected to have a life of 7 or more years. So we want these improvements to last at least 7 years. And be a long-term investment in St. Paul. All of our proposals are reviewed by the Neighborhood Star board. We'll talk a little bit about what that looks like. And there is a 1-to-1 match for projects requesting over $50,000. Some additional how to apply information. Everything is online. So all of our applications have to come online through Zoom grants. You can link to Zoom directly from our website, which is stpaul.gov/nstar. There is a big button that says apply, and you can apply there. If you have some issues with technology or just need some additional resources or additional translation besides what's translated on our website, please do check out the St. Paul Public Libraries. They have community specialists who are really wonderful working with our residents, and they're familiar with the program and they are ready to help. So that's a good first resource if needed. Be sure to submit your proposal in advance of May 15th. So even though you have until the afternoon of May 15th, we always have technical issues. Zoom grants can get overloaded. And unfortunately, I have seen folks have everything ready to go and they just can't get that submit to work just because of technical issues. So if you walk away with nothing else from this, walk away with get it in at least a day or two in advance, just to make sure that technology isn't the barrier. Every application must have all required attachments. We'll go through what those are in a little bit. And we will also go through Zoom grants today, how to use it, some common issues. It's a pretty user-friendly system. There are some fees associated with the application. So there's a $75 application fee if your request is for $25,000 or less, and $125 if your request is for $25,000 or more. There is also a 1% closing fee for any awarded funds. So just something to keep in mind as you go through. And then application questions can be found at stpaul.gov/nstar to help you prepare your application in advance. So if you want to write it in Word and then kind of cut and paste into Zoom, I find that to be really helpful. So those are all there online for you. Here's just another snapshot of what the annual round process looks like. So some key dates. The applications are open right now. We're having the application workshop currently. They will be open until 4 p.m. on May 15th, but hopefully you're submitting earlier than that. Once all those applications are in, we will go through an internal staff review process. And so that's just screening for eligibility, making sure that any sort of I's are dotted as needed, and we will work with applicants in that process, just do a little extra screening. From there, the board will start their interview process. So everyone who is an eligible applicant that puts something in will get 10 minutes with the board. And that's just time to provide additional information, maybe share something you didn't have in your application, or for the board to ask questions. Once the board goes through that process, they will make their recommendations to the mayor's office. So they'll come up with a list of recommended funding for the projects. They'll send that over to the mayor's office. And from there, in the summer, the mayor and the city council will come up with their recommendations. They usually hew pretty closely to what the board suggests. And then in August, we're hoping, the city council will finalize those funding decisions. We will award, or we will notify awardees in August, and we'll get started in contracting in August and September. Just a note that this is the anticipated timeline. So when we're working with the mayor's office and the city council, competing priorities can come in, and so this could change, but this is what we're thinking for timing. So keep that in mind as you're thinking through what your project's going to look like and what your timelines are. All right, what makes a competitive proposal? So Neighborhood Star is scored and reviewed across 3 different domains. The first is public purpose. How does your project help make a better St. Paul for everyone? So does it contribute to the tax base? Does it create or retain jobs? Does it revitalize a vacant storefront? Advance climate action, sustainability, or resilience? Contribute to cultural diversity, or advance equity? And we're not expecting that projects are doing all of these things, but please share how it does some of these things. Another area is community need. How does this project address an identified neighborhood goal or need? And how is the project created with community input, whatever that community looks like for you? And then finally, capacity. Is the project financially feasible? Will it remain for 7 or more years? And is your organization or business ready to successfully implement and administer the project or program? Some of the required attachments are here, actually all of them. So you'll want to make sure that you include these in your application. So that includes evidence of site control, which is just something that says I can make improvements to this property. It could be a lease, purchase agreement, title. Evidence that you are in good standing with the Minnesota Secretary of State. Contractors' estimates. And this is just so we have a good idea kind of the scope of your project, and we understand that you have a good idea of what it might cost. You're not beholden to working with the contractors that you include in the application, but it's just something that we ask you include as a scope document. A project pro forma, which is basically a cash flow document. We do have an example of what a pro forma looks like on our website that you are welcome to use. Past 2 years of either tax returns or audited financials, whichever is relevant to your organization. If you are a startup business, a business plan can be substituted instead. Resumes of the project manager or other key management for the project. Photos of your proposed project site or service area. And I will say the board loves photos, so please include good photos. And if applicable, subgrant and subloan guidelines. So those are for the folks that are applying to re-grant funds. If you're doing that, please include your guidelines. And if applicable, additional sources of funds. So if other funding sources are going to complete your project, make sure that you include that information. You could also include some optional attachments, letters of support, conflict of interest policy, a balance sheet, a W-9, really anything that you think would be helpful for us to better understand your project. Really important to note, if you can't provide a required attachment, that is okay, but you do have to let us know why, and you do have to upload something. So, if for some reason you can't get, I don't know, a resume on time, please just upload a note that says, here's why I can't get this attachment, and here's what else you might need to know, just so we can say that your application is complete. We will say it's incomplete if you upload something that just says available upon request. This is the request. So please be as thorough as you can. Yeah, I see a hand raised.
Hi, my name is Pang, and I'm just curious about the resume for the project manager. Is that for the contractor's resume, or is that the managing resume for the organization?
Either or, yes, and. I think just whatever helps us understand that capacity piece, like somebody who is managing the project on either side knows what they're doing, they can get all the work done. So whatever makes sense for your project is just fine.
Thank you.
Sure. All right, awarded funds. If you're awarded funds, here's a little bit of information to know. Neighborhood Star is a disbursement and reimbursement grant program. So we are asking everyone to incur expenses before we're going to be able to get money out the door. It's not the kind of grant program where you apply and then you get a check for $50,000. So keep that in mind. There's a fair amount of documentation that goes into getting the funds. Like I said before, there's a 1% closing fee on awarded funds. So if you got a $50,000 grant, there'd be a closing fee of $500. Reimbursement requests have some stipulations on them. So they must be for STAR eligible activities per your contract. So be careful about what you apply for and what you put in your contract, because that's what we're going to hold you to when you're asking for funding. It must be for activities incurred after the funding is approved by the city council. So again, that is expected to be late summer, early fall, but really important to keep that date in mind. If you've already started a project, we're not going to be able to pay for things that happened ahead of that approval date. And must include sufficient documentation of the expense. So an invoice or a receipt, and it must be approved by city compliance and STAR staff. So there's some layers of approval that happen. We ask that requests be submitted once per month until project completion. We can be flexible on that. And then we often have a 5% retainage on construction as well until projects are complete and we have evidence of completion. So the process can take up to 4 weeks from the time you ask for funding to the time it gets to you. In part, that's because we still use the mail. So it takes a little time to get a check out the door, but hopefully that is like the the most lengthy version. It typically will take less than 4 weeks, but I just do want to let people know that it can take some time. So as you're thinking about your cash flow, that's something to really, really keep in mind. And I am going to turn it over to a couple of my colleagues to talk a little bit about contracting and working with project managers.
Hi, my name is Naya Hardiman. I am one half of the Neighborhood Star project management team. If you're awarded funds, you'll be working with either myself or Tim. So I'll pass it over to Tim to introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Tim Scott. I'm one of the other project managers on the Neighborhood Star team, so I'll probably be working with some of you as well. Nice to meet you all.
So if you're awarded funds, Tim or myself will be your main point of contact for contract execution, compliance, and for fund disbursement. And then from the time that your projects are awarded funds and then those funds are approved, you'll have a year after that to get under contract. Though getting under contract can be a lengthy process due to compliance and insurance requirements. So we recommend that you get in contact with us as soon as possible to discuss the process, even if you're not ready to start your project right away. But you can expect to hear from Tim or I within, a few weeks after funding is approved. And once your contract is executed, they'll be good for a period of 2 years, and Tim or myself will work with you through the duration of your project.
Formative. Wait.
Thanks, Naya. So we're going to head into compliance. This is really important parts of what may attach to your project and hopefully will help you plan ahead for the timeline around your project, how much things might cost, and what are going to be some of the expectations from the city. Like Naya mentioned, your project managers are going to help you kind of navigate this process, but there is a lot to keep in mind. So entities that do business with the city of St. Paul must meet compliance requirements, and those requirements are set by the city to ensure that local, state, federal, and funder requirements are met. Sometimes that's simply referred to as compliance. You'll hear that word thrown around a lot. That's what it means. Contract compliance requirements are determined based on project type and cost, so those will be different for every project. But some compliance related to things like human rights, labor standards like minimum wage, and insurance are required of all of our projects, so that will apply to everybody. We'll review the most common compliance requirements today, and again, Naya and Tim will help if you're awarded funds to figure out how to do all of this when it comes to contracting, but just really important to keep this stuff in mind before you embark on a project. And that's largely because compliance may increase the cost of projects and it may extend project timelines. So just plan accordingly as we go. So I will hand it over to my colleague, Mark, to talk about insurance.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So just a little bit of background. Now, the insurance can be frustrating and maybe it might feel at times disproportionate to the size of your project, and we understand that. From my standpoint as the risk manager for the city, I need to have compliance, but I also don't want to get in the way of really valuable projects that are brought in front of me. The biggest one is, and we ask for what we call certificates of insurance. You'll get that through your insurance agent. We ask for $1.5 million of coverage for general liability. Now, a couple things with that. The reason is by Minnesota statute. The state of Minnesota enacted a law that says cities can be sued up to $1.5 million. So we ask, if we're giving out funds, that we be covered for the liability that the city could face. if there's something that goes wrong with the project. And so the city wants to protect itself when it's giving out money, which is obviously understandable. The problem is when the legislature did a $1.5 million coverage, what they didn't really factor in is that no insurance companies really sell $1.5 million coverages. That can be difficult. We'll work with you. The biggest thing I can tell you is getting a $1 million policy plus an umbrella for $1 million. That's what their increments they're sold in. That will almost always, I've never seen it in fact differently than this, be cheaper than trying to find a $1.5 million general liability policy. So if you contact your insurance company and you say, or your agent and say, I need a $1.5 million insurance policy, they may quote you something that's really high if they can even find it. So our suggestion would be is that you either try and get a 1.5 million or do a 1 million plus a $1 million umbrella policy. The big things, the other things that we're going to want to know is if you have commercial vehicles, we have policy limits on that we want you to comply with. A lot of times folks don't have that, but they may be driving personal automobiles in furtherance of the contract. Totally understood. That happens a lot. We just want to know that those vehicles are insured, at least at the state minimum. So if we can have something that shows that either you or your employees that are working on this contract have auto insurance on the vehicle that they're going to be driving. We also require workers' compensation insurance that sometimes just isn't necessary for your businesses. We also understand that. We have a very simple certificate form where you can indicate that you are not that you do not have to have workers' compensation insurance coverage in the state of Minnesota. We'll send you out that form. You fill it out. It literally takes maybe 30 seconds to fill out that form, but it is something. I'm not going to approve a contract if I don't know about workers' compensation coverage, whether you don't have it or you do. So I am going to need those things. So those are really the basics that I need. I need the 1.5 million under general liability, and that has a bunch of different little boxes, but those boxes will be filled by the certificate of insurance. And like I say, the best way to get that probably is a $1 million general liability and then an umbrella. I need to know about automobiles, that anything that's used is insured, and the workers' compensation. Those are the main things that I need to do before I can approve a contract. And my goal is to approve the contract. So that's all I have, Erin. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. I think we have a question about insurance. Are UEI number and cage code required?
I'm going to say no, because I honestly don't know what UEI. I'm assuming that's unemployment, but I'm not sure. We don't if it is unemployment, we don't need that. Unemployment is really a personal covenant between you and your employees and doesn't affect the city. And I don't know what a cage code requirement. So if it can be, if that question can be enlarged, I may be able to help. And when you're talking about that, that's a good point about to contractors. If you have the insurance requirements that protect the city, that's that's what we care about, because our contract is between you and the city for the disbursements of funds. You may very well have subcontractors, and I would encourage you to have your subcontractors to have insurance, workers' compensation, all of those kinds of things. But our issue is that you have it. And so I'm not going to get involved in looking at whether or not your contracts with your subcontractors have sufficient insurance. I'm just really mostly concerned for my approval that you as the grantee have the sufficient insurance. I hope that helps.
Yeah, and for the other codes, Linda, I think you were asking, I think we ask for your like tax ID number. I don't think you have to worry too much about SAM or other federal codes, but if it comes up, let me know. All right, thanks, Mark. Here's
Thank
his
you.
contact information. So again, we are available for questions, and we'll post this on our website, but please be in touch as you have questions as we go. So we will move along to some human rights and equal economic opportunity, or HERO compliance. And I will turn this over to Beth and her team.
Terrific. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. I am joined by two investigators, Stephanie Bamer and Pachia Yang, so I'm going to let them present our information. Stephanie?
Thanks, Beth. Good morning. I'm Stephanie, and I work within the City of St. Paul's Human Rights Division of the Human Rights and Equal Economic Opportunity Department. And what I want to make sure everyone's aware of is that the City of St. Paul does have a human rights ordinance, which prohibits discrimination based on a person's protected class. So you'll see on our slide here, it shares all the different protected classes that are covered by the ordinance and the areas that were there's prohibit all the areas where we prohibit discrimination. Our team, our role as investigators is to conduct intakes with folks when they feel they've been discriminated against, to file charges and conduct investigations. But also our team is available to provide education to any community member in any capacity, as far as if you have questions about the ordinance and what it covers. And I would say we very frequently, most often, get inquiries and complaints from folks in the areas of employment, in housing, and public accommodations. So something to be aware of. And often the protected classes most often are race and disability. So just to share that bit of information. But we're available as a resource to anyone anytime they have questions about the ordinance. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Pachia, and the Labor Standards Division within HERO works not only to enforce, but also educate businesses and employees and the community members about the city's two labor standard ordinance, which are Earn Sick and Save Time, also known as ESST, and minimum wage. ESST has been in effect within the city since 2018. As you all may be aware, the state of Minnesota also enacted ESST that went live in January of this year. An employee who works within the geographic boundaries of St. Paul can use ESST for themselves, family members who are sick, experiencing domestic abuse, sexual assault, stalking. If there's a place of their place of employment is closed for public health crisis such as COVID, or if their place of care or school closes for inclement weather. An employee can earn 1 hour for every 30 hours worked, and they could start using ESST after working 80 hours. The city minimum wage changes every January 1st or July 1st, depending on the business size. Currently, the macro business minimum wage is $15.57, and the minimum wage for large, small, and micro businesses will change on July 1st of this year. Feel free to reach out to our team if you have any questions regarding ESST and minimum wage as it applies to yourself, your businesses, your employees. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're going to move into affirmative action, and I am sorry, I guess I don't know if Yia is on the call. Yia, are you on the call?
I am.
Oh, yay.
All right, so for affirmative action, contract compliance requirement, any developer, I'm sorry, I've been doing this for so long, so you have the screen, you could read it, but I'm just gonna speak from what I usually talked for affirmative action requirements. The city requires anybody receiving money that's 50,000 or more to have an affirmative action plan certified with the city of St. Paul. The affirmative action plan is certified for a 2-year period, and there is a $75 fee associated with that. And at the moment, I could only take checks. So you'll have to send that in. All of this is required when, and if you are awarded STAR money, 50,000 or more, or cumulative of STAR money and other money that's coming directly from the city, you will be required to have the affirmative action plan. There is no exemption for nonprofit vendors or vendor with no employees or LLC. I see for STAR grantee, sometimes we have a holding company or LLC for the project. In that case, that entity that is the awardee for the STAR money is the recipient that need to have the affirmative action plan, even though there's no in place. That's just how the law is written in the ordinance. So that's for affirmative action plan. Obviously, your project manager will make sure that you have the affirmative action plan before your contract is executed with the City of St. Paul, or city department director sign the your contract. And you see there's also a website where you could check your company status as well. I'm always here as well. Call me or email me for status or help with filling out the application or just more information about affirmative action.
Thanks,
All
Ethan.
right. Yep, thank you.
The next area of compliance is prevailing wage. I think that Ethan, our expert, is not here today, so I will go over a little bit about that. Prevailing wage is something that will apply to your project if it involves any kind of construction work, if you are receiving any amount of public money, and if the total cost of your project meets or exceeds $25,000. If there's federal money, that threshold is $2,000. And what prevailing wage is basically a minimum wage for construction workers. So your contract with us will have a list of what those hourly rates are. And if prevailing wage is triggered on your project, your contractors will need to ensure that they are paying those their workers at those wages and provide documentation of that. What you have to do if prevailing wage applies is when you're looking for contractors, make sure that you tell them that prevailing wage will apply. Most contractors are going to be really familiar with this. And every once in a while, some contractors don't like working with projects that have prevailing wage. So it's good to know. Make sure to include the prevailing wage paperwork that we give you in your contract to all of your contractors, and make sure that they are submitting those payroll documentation. It's outlined in your contract. It's all electronic, but that is something that they'll need to do for us to approve payment requests. And if they don't pay the required rates to their workers or fail to submit their payroll, it could result in a delay of payment from us. All of this will be discussed again. If you're awarded funds, there is a compliance conference that you'll have to talk through all of these things with your project managers and our compliance team. But if you have questions in the meantime, there is this contract compliance email address you can use, and you can contact Ethan at this phone number and email address. We're going to move into vendor outreach. I believe Brett is going to talk to us about that.
Yes, thank you, Erin. Hi, everyone. I'm Brett Picoy. I'm a compliance coordinator with the city, and I administer the vendor outreach program. The vendor outreach program is a small business inclusion ordinance that generally applies to projects with any amount of city funds with a total development cost over $50,000. That's how it normally works, but it applies to STAR awards slightly differently. With STAR awards, VOP requirements actually only come to apply if the STAR award itself is over $50,000, regardless of the amount of private funding that may be attached to the project, or if there's any other kinds of city funds in the project other than the STAR award. When VOP does apply, the ordinance establishes a goal of 25% of all subcontracting opportunity should be awarded to certified small businesses, And then there are sub goals off that you can see there. 5% go to minority-owned small businesses, MBEs. 10% go to women-owned small businesses, WBEs, and the last 10% go to general small businesses, SBEs. And it's our CERT program who certifies businesses under each of those categories, and they maintain a searchable database of all those certified businesses that can count towards VOP goals. And you can go to the next slide here, Aaron. I won't get too much more in the weeds. This would all be discussed a lot more in depthly at a pre-bid or pre-con meeting post-award, like Aaron was saying earlier. But generally, you first have to, the first thing you have to do is access the CERT directory. Look to find any certified businesses that you may be able to reach out to with any opportunity that there may be on the project. We usually suggest you reach out to a minimum of 3 per, but that's not a hard rule. You should also keep track of all the CERT vendors you may reach out to. In the event goals aren't met, then the next thing we have to ask for is what's called good faith effort, which is just any proof you can provide that you tried to meet goals. And then sort of the last thing is, depending on the size of the project, there's an online reporting component where general contractors have to report payments to their subs, and the subs have to confirm or deny those payments. That's really, the super brief overview, but we do like highlighting as well that our CERT list is a great resource, for you to find vendors that can do work you may need regardless of whether or not the VOP applies. We definitely encourage you to go check it out if you haven't before, learn how to search in it. It's a great resource. You can go to the last slide there, Aaron. So that is pretty much it. My email is there if anyone ever has any questions. Same goes for the contact information for our CERT program. If you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to reach out. But otherwise, that's all for me. Thank you, Aaron.
Brett. So just a couple more compliance areas to get through, just to let y'all know where we are at. Minnesota business subsidy law, our contact for that is not here, so I'll talk a little bit about that. Business subsidy is something created through statute and a city council resolution that says that any business receiving state or local government assistance must have a defined public purpose, and that recipients must set goals for job creation, wages, and benefits to be achieved within 2 years of receiving assistance. And luckily in your application, you'll be asked to talk about your public purpose. So business subsidy applies to recipients receiving a subsidy of $25,000 or more in grant funds, unless you are exempt. And here's the little star about when you might be exempt. Most people are not exempt. Annual reporting for business subsidy is required by March 1st of each year. It's not complicated reporting, but just know that there is a reporting deadline in March. And if business subsidy applies and you have an award of over $150,000, there will be some other requirements, such as a notice and public hearing and specific wage and job goals to be attained within 2 years with a 5-year commitment to continue operations. If you have questions on business subsidy, Jenny Wolf is our expert on the economic development team, and here is her contact information. Jenny is also our expert on St. Paul living wage, which applies to recipients receiving $100,000 or more in a city business subsidy, unless, again, you have an exemption, which is most people do not. But what the living wage ordinance says is that recipients and qualifying tenants must pay a living wage to each employee or independent contractor who is employed in the location for which the subsidy was provided for either 3 years or the term of the STAR grant agreement. Living wages are determined at 130% of federal poverty for a family of 4, which is this year $19.50 per hour, or 110% of the federal poverty rate for a family of 4 if health benefits are included, and that is $16.50 in 2024. The wage rates change every year in January. You'll be updated on that if it applies, and there is an annual certification requirement demonstrating compliance if this attaches to your project. Again, Jenny Wolf is the contact if you have questions. Next is sustainable building ordinance with Kurt. Hi, Kurt.
Yeah, Good morning. Thank you, Aaron. My name is Kurt Schultz. I manage the Sustainable Building Ordinance for the City of St. Paul. Mayor Carter and the City Council are committed to reducing the environmental footprint of the city, and we take a number of measures to do that. We've set aggressive climate action goals and emission reduction goals, both for city operations and the city as a whole. And one of the tools we use to help reach those climate action goals and reduce emissions is the Sustainable Building Ordinance. Now, I won't spend a lot of time talking about it because it will only apply to those projects receiving more than $200,000 in public assistance. That means assistance from the STAR program or any other public funds that come to the project through the city. So that could be state, federal, Met Council, and so forth. It applies to both new construction and renovation projects. And there are two basic key requirements to the ordinance. One is that all projects must be certified through one of the eligible green building standards, such as LEED, Minnesota B3, Green Communities, or Green Star are the eligible standards. And then we have a separate set of green requirements that are found in the St. Paul overlay. And so regardless of what green building standards, you need to comply with the overlay requirements as well. And those include such things as energy efficiency, indoor environmental quality, construction waste diversion, indoor water use conservation, and things like that. So there's a lot in the ordinance, and if you should receive more than $200,000 in public assistance, we'll sit down and have a detailed conversation about what the ordinance requires. I think that's all I'm going to talk about at this moment. Please reach out to me. The earlier, the better. As soon as you think you might be receiving an award of this amount, let me know, and we'll begin the conversation. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kurt. So that's all the compliance we're going to talk about today. Lots of information, refer back as you're applying, but just know that all of these things are something you should take into consideration as you're thinking through your projects. So next up, we're going to go through some step-by-step on how to use Zoom grants, and I will turn this over to Nancy Vang, our management assistant.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Nancy Vang, and I assist with the STAR programs, both Neighborhood STAR and Cultural STAR. And I'll be going over how to use Zoom grants with you. As Aaron stated earlier, our applications did open last Friday on April 5th. We currently only accept online applications submitted through Zoom grants. To access the 2024 Neighborhood STAR application, you can do that by going to our website, and there will be a button that says apply, and you just click on that button. It should take you right to the Zoom grants website. And from there, you should be able to see what programs the city has available that you can apply to, and you want to select the 2024 Neighborhood STAR program. In order to start an application, you do need to log in. Otherwise, it won't save any of your information. So you should, when you log in, it should have like a bunch of like red text that says log in or sign in to fill out an application. So just keep that in mind. We like to emphasize that you should start your application early because there can be a lot of technical issues that might come up. Zoom grants can typically take up to 24 hours to respond to any tech support questions. STAR staff, we are unable to see your applications before you submit them. So if you have any issues, we wouldn't be able to see what your screen and see what issues you're having. So that's why we highly strongly emphasize that you start your application early and submit early so that you don't have the issue of the website getting overloaded and you're stuck with the buffering symbol. As I stated before, you're going to want to log in to submit your application. And there's a bunch of ways to log in and to sign up, as you can see there. You can go to the next slide. So when you're starting your application, there are different user types. The first one I'm going to talk about is the applicant, and that's the person who will be the main contact on the application. So each applicant should submit applications from one Zoom Grants account. So by applicant, we mean your organization or your entity. There should only be one account for your organization. If you have already used Zoom Grants before, don't create a new account. Just use the one that you've been using. This helps us to be able to track all of your applications that you've worked on in the past. If you're unable to access your Zoom Grants account, reach out to Zoom Grants at the email that's provided there, and they can help you with accessing your account. Maybe the person who created the account before is no longer there, and it was your account was tied to that person's email. Zoom Grants can work its magic to get you access to that account so that you're not having to create a new one, or they could transfer ownership to you. If you're new to using Zoom Grants, we recommend that you use a general email rather than your own personal work email or your personal email. Create a general work email that anybody could access, so that if for some reason you're no longer with the organization, someone else can use that login information without having to create a new account. Applicants can work on, archive, delete, as well as control other users' access to the application. And an application can only be submitted by the applicant. Collaborators and additional contacts cannot submit applications for the applicant. They cannot edit the application without the applicant giving them that kind of access. Collaborators are invited by the applicant to work on the application. The applicant determines how much access a collaborator can have. So they might say you can work on the application, but you can't attach documents or something like that. So they control how much a collaborator can work on an application. Collaborators cannot edit the primary applicant's information, and they are also unable to submit the application or archive or delete it. And then additional contacts are just folks that you include to receive notification on the status and stuff of an application. They don't have access to work on an application, but they'll just receive notifications through Zoom Grants if we send them out. Again, start and submit your application early to give adequate time to avoid or address any technical issues. You can log out and log back in to work on your application as many times as you need before the deadline and before you submit your application. Once you submit it, you can't go back into your application. And if you do, then just reach out to STAR staff and we can reopen your application for you. We recommend that you work on your narrative responses in a Word document and not directly into Zoom Grants. And that way you are able to kind of not have to keep log in and log out of Zoom Grants. You can just copy and paste your responses. But when you do that, or if you do that, just remember that Zoom Grants is a little bit finicky and it doesn't allow you to have any kind of formatting. So you can't bold or you can't italicize or have bullet points. So you'll want to remove all of that. If you copy and paste any of that formatting into your response, you won't be able to submit your application. Your response will autosave when you tab to or click on the next question. The appearance and then disappearance of the saving screen indicates that the answer was saved and your application was updated successfully. But if it continues to flash the saving screen and it's not changing from that, then there's likely an issue. So you may refresh it and then you'll find that none of your stuff was saved, which is why we also recommend that you work on your responses in a Word document so you don't lose all of that. If you do have this issue where it's not saving your work, you'll want to check your internet connection, make sure you are removing all of the formatting, And if you've tried everything and it still isn't working, then reach out to Zoom Grants. Again, STAR staff can't see your application, so we wouldn't be able to help you with that, but Zoom Grants can. So if you reach out to them, they can let you know that, oh yeah, one of your, there's like some invisible character or something in your response, and that's why it's not saving. So again, start early so that if you have those issues, Zoom Grants can help you with that. When you submit your application, every question has to have a response, and all required documents must be uploaded. If you don't meet these two criteria, it's not going to submit. So if there's a question that was accidentally left blank, it's not going to tell you what question, but you're going to have a message up top that says, something's missing or something's not working. And so you'll want to make sure you double check all of your questions and your responses and all of your documents before you click the submit button. Click on the print preview link of your application to review your responses for completion. Sometimes when you copy and paste stuff, some things might get cut off. And we do have a character limit on the responses, so that could happen. So it's good to click on that print preview just to be sure that your response is complete. Also verify that you've uploaded the correct files before submitting your application. Like Erin said earlier, if for some reason you don't have any of the required documents, upload a note in there explaining why. Don't upload something that says available upon request. Otherwise, your application will be considered incomplete and ineligible. If you need to make any updates after you've submitted your application, let us know and we can reopen your application if it's before the application period closes. So once that window closes, you cannot make any edits unless we ask you to make edits. And this is Zoom Grants contact information. They're a really great resource. They also have a great help resource on their website. There's like a help link there, and it takes you to what they call Zoom Grants University. Click on that and it teaches you all about how to use Zoom Grants, and it's a great resource to use. But if you need immediate assistance, then they're generally really good about responding to emails. I've never needed to call them because they're so quick at responding to emails. But as it gets closer to the application close date, the volume of requests might get higher. So again, start your applications early so that you don't have to deal with those issues. Again, they're good about responding within 24 hours. Unless it's over the weekend, then you'll have to wait until the next business day.
Thanks, Nancy. And I'll just remind everyone, like Nancy was saying, work on it in Word or another format, and those application questions are online. So you can see those in advance. There are, I believe, 20 questions plus some voluntary questions. So that resource is available to you, and the character limit she referenced is pretty high. So we encourage folks to be concise wherever possible, but don't worry too much that you're going to get cut off after like 250 characters. It's a pretty high character limit. So just a few additional resources, then I'm going to open it up for questions. Like I've said, most everything can be found on our website, which is stpaul.gov/nstar, guidelines, some frequently asked questions, information about our board, links to sample contracts, link to sample attachments, other STAR-funded projects. That's all online. So please check it out. Use whatever is helpful to you. HERO, which is kind of our shorthand for our compliance team, is also online at stpaul.gov/HERO, HREEO. And here is your neighborhood STAR staff. You've met all of us here, and feel free to contact Nancy and me first. We are available throughout the whole application period for your questions, or if you need additional support. And Naya and Tim are additionally wonderful resources. So I will just end with some photos of recent STAR projects. Donut Trap is a brick and mortar bakery that's going to be opening soon. The Lowlands is an event center right across the bridge from St. Paul. Sun Foods recently did some updates to their location. Papa Legba got some facade improvements with STAR funds, and Taste of Rondo as well. So just some nice sunny pictures on a nice sunny day to show the kind of work that we do. And that's all the information that we have, but I will open this up for any questions. Happy to answer any questions you might have. Just unmute yourself and go ahead.
Hi, I noticed that you had said storefront, but what if it's like a location inside of a commercial property?
That's fine. I mean, as long as you have site control, you have the ability to make capital modifications, that's just fine. What is the expected number of applicants? Good question. So I would say we don't necessarily know the number of applicants so much as we know that every year we probably get at least twice as much in requests as we are able to fund. So I'm going to guess we're going to get like 5 million in requests this year. And whether that's 100 applications or something else, I don't necessarily know. But we're typically oversubscribed in that there is much more need than we're able to fund. And the average award amount is, I would say, 50,000 or less. Part of that is because the match isn't required up to 50,000. And part of that is just we have kind of shifted the program to do a bit more, just to spread it out more, kind of keep it at that 50,000 mark. That said, if you need to ask for more, absolutely ask for what you need.
Hello, I am calling in from Theater Moo, and I'm wondering, am I correct in assuming that projects need to be for brand new buildings, or can the funds be used to renovate rental offices or something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. It does not need to be for brand new buildings. It can certainly be used for renovation. I will say for rental units, that is an allowable use of Neighborhood Star funds, so long as they are not for your rental unit. So we can't fund individual homeowners, but certainly we fund lots and lots of renovation projects and welcome that sort of application.
Hey, this is Tommy. I just tried to give you a quick call,
I have a question. So let's say, for example, like fixtures that goes into the wall, like storage units and spaces. Do you cover that? I mean, that's inside of the business.
Yeah, I would say the shorthand is if it is permanently affixed and it's going to last for 7 or more years, that typically is allowable as a capital improvement. I see a question in the chat. Are applicants that have previously applied given funding priority if their improvements were not selected in previous cycles? No, I don't think so. I don't think that's something that the board is taking into account when they're evaluating proposals.
Hi, my name is Pang,
Oh,
and I have a quick question. I am representing a nonprofit organization that, makes less than $500,000 a year, or has less than $500,000 a year and less than 10 employees. And so we're very new to capital improvement, addressing capital improvement needs. Is there any help in identifying how to make bids, like the how process of how we even procure contractors or project managers for these types of funding? We need a little bit of hand-holding.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I would say that we have some limited ability to support with things like that, right? So if you were awarded funds, your project manager could certainly help. I would say most of what they have the ability to do, though, and Nye or Tim, jump in where I'm wrong, it is often they would be directing you to like that cert list that we were talking about or other sort of resources. I don't know where there would be additional hand-holding around that sort of thing. So if anyone else has the answer to that, jump in, please.
So for the cert list, do we just like send out a scope of work and then receive a ton of responses back? Or when looking at the cert list?
I don't know. Anyone from Hero or?
Yeah,
Or
I
other
can answer
teams
that. The cert list works in a way that you put in a scope of work and you would get a list of vendors, that their profiles say that they're able to complete that scope of work, and then you would then have the opportunity to reach out to them directly. I do not believe there's a way to reach out in mass, to every business under one specific scope of work. It mostly has to be done, on a direct basis.
The only other thing I might add to that question is perhaps some of the neighborhood groups, right? Like there are some groups, I can't even think what they're called off the top of my head, that help with small business capacity and things like that. I know you're a nonprofit, so that might be a little bit different. But that might be a resource, or even like the Council of Nonprofits, they might have some places to direct you around kind of getting those projects done. So some of those bigger organizations that have more referral resources might be worth checking out. Okay, question in the chat. Oh, go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. Can the funds be used for upgrading parking lots? The property,
Yes.
on property? Okay, that was my only question. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. In the chat, if
What
you're
if-
looking to get funding for 2 separate scope of work projects, would it be better to submit 2 applications or combine them into 1 application? I guess I'm not sure which would be better. If it increases the cost of your project to combine them, then more compliance will attach. I don't think we see a lot of folks submitting 2 applications. So I'm not sure how that would be evaluated necessarily. Yeah, I don't know. I think I would probably say combine it into 1, unless, if it's at the same site. I would probably put it all in 1 application, but STAR team, if that's the wrong advice, feel free to jump in.
Nope, that's right. So STAR projects are based on project address. So if it's for the same address, put it in 1 application. But if you have if it's 2 different locations, then I would do a separate application for each location. But I'm not sure well, we can discuss that privately too. But yeah, for now, yes. If it's for 2 separate locations, then 2 applications. If it's for the same location, then just put it all in 1.
I can't remember. I'm sorry, I have a question. I can't remember if y'all answered this question or not. So let's say for y'all need like a itemized statement of the supplies that will be needed. And also, let's say, for example, if I apply for like 25,000, do you go through each individual itemized thing and deny some of it, or do you deny the whole application?
No, so I would say it is helpful for us to get a full picture of your project. So when you're filling out the budget section, for example, you'll see broad kind of categories. So like commercial renovation. I think in there, we don't necessarily need to see like, we're going to buy 4 windows and we're going to do, that level of detail isn't necessary there. But when it comes to writing your contract, right, you'll put together a statement of work that might be a little more specific. And then, yes, when you start to submit for reimbursements, we do need receipts for every single thing. And if for some reason one of those receipts was not eligible, we just wouldn't reimburse for that. Does that answer your question?
Yes. So do I have to pay for it first and then get reimbursement from the Neighborhood Star Grant, or how does that work?
Yes, broadly, yes. You can do it that way. You can also get an invoice and we can pay that. So if you say hired a contractor to put up a wall and you had an invoice for that, we could get the funds to you to pay that invoice. We just may retain some of those funds until the project is complete, and it would still just be subject to our guidelines. So That's what we mean where it's either reimbursement, which is giving you the money after you've paid, or it's disbursement, which is getting you the money to pay something with appropriate documentation. Okay, I see some questions in the chat here. Oh, thanks for the Propel Nonprofits. That is a good resource for nonprofits if you need some additional support. Questions about where to find the cert list. Thanks for answering that, folks. And some additional links in the comments here about additional compliance details. And I did go back just to see the stpaul.gov/hero, tons of information on there. So you can certainly check that out as well.
I got a question.
Other questions? Yeah.
I have a question. So if we've got a lot of work, a lot of different things projects that I want to work on, do I just, and I heard you say like the most likely you're gonna do loans for 50K, and I know that's not only, but do I just break it down to kind of, would you recommend just one part of a bigger project that might be 50,000, and then apply for that, and then just kind of explain how it relates to the bigger overall goals? What would you recommend?
Certainly you could. Yeah, you certainly could do that. Again, I would say if you know you're going to do a project that's going to cost you $250,000, right? Regardless of whether the STAR funds are paying for all or just a part of that, the compliance is going to apply no matter what. So it's better for us to always know like the full scope of a project, just so that we can prepare around that going in. That said, it is helpful to know like this 50 grand of STAR funding is going to do these, pieces of the project so that we can see how it fits into the whole. And yeah, I would say 50,000 is not a cap, right? So it is likely that we're funding around that level, but certainly if you need more funding, ask for more funding. I don't want to discourage people from asking for what they need.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Other questions?
There's some questions in the chat.
Yeah, if I'm a tenant, can I apply, or does the owner of the building need to apply? Whoever controls the building. So I'm going to assume that would be the owner, whoever can prove that they have control over that. And again, we can't give funds for individual homeowners or renters, right? So we're not going to fund people to fix up their own house or apartment. So in that case, probably the building owner. And then matching requirement for an amount of less than 50,000, that requirement is 0. There is no match for under 50. Yes, there will be a recording of the presentation posted on our website. The slides will be posted as well. So come back and watch this as many times as you want to. I'm sure it's riveting.
Are you still allowed to apply for the year-round funding?
Yep. Yeah. So applying for regular Neighborhood Star does not prevent you from applying for other programs, including Cultural Star. The only thing you can't do is apply for the same project in different programs. So as long as they are different, that is just fine.
Erin, I just want to backtrack a little bit on the question about if you're a tenant. Can you apply? Tenants can apply, but they have to have permission from the property owner to make any capital improvements. And we would need like a written statement from the property owner or something along those lines showing that you have that permission. So yes, a tenant can apply, but again, it's probably in the best interest that the owner applies, but that doesn't mean a tenant cannot apply.
Yeah, thanks, Nancy. I was reading that as not commercial tenants. So yes, really good point. Other questions? All right. Not hearing additional questions, I'll just remind folks again, we are available, email, call, check out the website. We want to make this as easy as possible for everyone who's applying. And just say thank you so much for attending today. And we really look forward to working with you. Have a good afternoon. Enjoy the sunny day. Bye.